But again, Newland's law of octaves also not successful. Newland's law of octaves, children. Newland's arrange elements according to their increasing order of atomic mass, right? Yes. He found that every 8 element had a property similar to that of first element. Okay. So he compared these two octaves of music. So it is known as Newland's law of octaves. For example, lithium and sodium were found to be same. The properties of lithium and sodium are similar, right? Yes. This law, that is Newland's law of octaves, also not successful. Let's see what are the limitations of Newland's law of octave. The limitations of Newland's law of octaves. First limitation was the law of octaves applicable only up to calcium, children. The law of octaves was applicable only up to calcium. Can you see a round mark with red pen, children? Of octaves only applicable up to calcium. After calcium, what happens? Every 8th element did not possess the property of first element. Okay, that is after calcium, every 8th element did not possess the property similar to that of first elements. Okay, so it is the first limitation of Newland's law of octaves. What is the first limitation, children? The law of octaves was applicable only up to calcium. After calcium, what happens? Every 8th element did not possess the property similar to that of first element. Okay, children? Let's see the second limitation. During Newland's, only 56 elements were existed in nature. How many elements, children? 56 elements. And he thought that no more elements will be discovered in future. Later, what happened? New elements were discovered. And these elements were not able to fit in Newland's table. The second limitation, children. Newland's assumed that only 56 elements existed in nature and no more elements would be discovered in future. But later, several new elements were discovered whose properties did not fit into the law of octaves. Okay? See the third limitation, children. The last limitation of Newland's law of octaves was, in order to fit the elements into his table, Newland adjusted 2 elements in the same slot. What is the third limitation, children? In order to fit the elements into his table, Newland adjusted 2 elements in the same slot. See in the table, children, cobalt and nickel. CO for cobalt, Ni for nickel. Okay, cobalt and nickel. He placed cobalt and nickel with fluorine and chlorine, right? Yes. Fluorine and chlorine have entirely different properties compared to cobalt and nickel. So that it was also a drawback of Newland's law of octaves. Okay. Third limitation, children. In order to fit the elements into his table, Newland adjusted 2 elements in the same slot. In the case of cobalt and nickel, he placed it in same slot. He placed cobalt and nickel in the same slot as that of fluorine and chlorine, right? Yes. But in the case of fluorine and chlorine, it shows entirely different property as that of cobalt and nickel. So, that is Newland's law of octaves was a failure. I hope all the 3 limitations of Newland's law of octaves is clear, right? Let's revise again, children. What is the first limitation? The law of octave was applicable only up to calcium. Second limitation was Newland assumed that only 56 elements existed in nature and no more elements would be discovered in the future. But what happened later? Newland's were after that a lot of elements were discovered and these elements were not able to fit in Newland's table. Okay. The third limitation is, in order to fit elements into table, Newland adjusted two elements in the same slot. Okay. In the case of cobalt and nickel, he placed cobalt and nickel in the same slot. Okay. And also, cobalt and nickel possess entirely different property as that of fluorine and chlorine.